Welcome, everyone. Thank you for the people who are joining this panel live. Thank you for the people who are watching this recording afterwards. And today we're discussing one of Europe's most ambitious digital initiatives, the European Digital Identity Wallet, enabled by the eIDAS 2.0 framework. And I mean, at its core, this ambition is to create a trusted way for people and businesses to share verified information digitally across the whole European Union. But I want this discussion today not to be just about regulation and technology, but I also want to talk about trust. I want to talk about private sector adoption, fraud prevention, and all the future of digital interactions and governance. And to explore this, I'm joined by at least one expert. I hope the other expert is going to join us quite promptly, who have quite complementary perspectives. So, first of the panelists is Omer Shafiq, founder and CEO of Hovii. And his angle is very much around how EU wallets can be used in practice by businesses, public private services, for example, identity verification, onboarding, customer journeys, trusted digital interactions, right? So welcome, at least Omer, for joining this panel.
Thank you, Jonas. Glad to be here.
And yeah, I haven't even introduced myself. My name is Johanna-Kadri. I work as a digital transformation advisor at the e-Estonia Briefing Center. In my daily work, I just explain Estonia's digital transformation journey to international delegations visiting our country to learn more about us. And usually the conversation goes from multiple angles, the technology that enables this transformation, but also legislative foundations behind it, role of education and skills, so on and so on. And I see the second panelist has also joined us. Welcome, Davi.
Hello. Yeah, sorry.
So I'll do the introductions. Davi Tamkivi has joined us. He is the co-founder and CEO of Salv. He will bring deep expertise about anti-money laundering, fraud prevention, financial crime compliance. Also, you have previously helped to build those capabilities in quite famous Estonian unicorns such as Wise and Skype, right?
Yeah, that's true, correct.
So let's just start with the panel. Let's not waste any more time. And I was thinking about starting with the basics. So maybe, Omer, you could explain to the listeners who are not very deeply familiar with it. How would you briefly explain what the EU wallet is, why it matters, and what problem it's trying to solve?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Joanna. If I have to put it simply, I'd say from a point of view of the citizens of EU, these are just mobile applications in which a citizen can have a digital version of their identity, like their driving license or a digital ID in it, and it could be used in your day-to-day interactions to prove your ID, while maybe when you need to show your ID when you pick a package from post office, or maybe when you go buy a beer for a weekend and you need to prove your age. And of course, although this enables a lot of use cases, it does have a unique element to it, which is that this concept is and the way it is built, this new digital identity, the EUDI wallet-based identity, it is more privacy preserving, which means that the consumers or the citizens are in control of what they share and who they share it with. So it enables something called selective disclosure. You choose that what attributes of those interactions of your identity you want to share during these interactions, and who you are sharing it with. Are they a trusted, relying party or an authority that you want to trust? So ultimately bringing the trust back to the citizens in their own hands, unlike current systems where there is a centralized service. Most of the times in Nordics, these are banks or some eID services who control your identity on your behalf, where when you want to verify yourself online, you need to basically authenticate yourself with these third-party services like banks, and then they give the proof to the verifying authority that yes, this person can be trusted, them being as an intermediary in this.
So I think you both agree that with this EU wallet, we are not just talking about a new cool technical tool, but a broader change in how digital trust works in Europe.
Very likely. So the way I see it is that it has been long coming. Uh, we are decentralizing the trust, or if you don't want to use that term, then I would say making it more sovereign, giving it back to the people. Just like with GDPR, it gave the rights to the data protection back to the people, where that you control your data, you have the right under the GDPR to basically ask for removal of data if you don't want it somewhere in any service. Just like that here in this under eIDAS 2.0, you have the ability to control who accesses what and how much of your personal information.
Now, when we go towards the business side of things, I mean, yeah, citizens, of course, are very interested in who sees their data and the power they have over their privacy. But of course, in most cases, this involves the private sector as well. And I guess this next question is more for Davi. I mean, these types of technical solutions come with their own security standards and responsibilities. What are your thoughts? What would make businesses adopt those wallet-based solutions rather than just see it as another burden of compliance or integration?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that. Coming from Estonia and having the experience of using digital ID and digital ID wallet type of solutions already for the last 20, 25 years, we have seen all the benefits. But when people are discussing or asking, like, what's the what made it possible, or what made it so scalable across the industries? I think one thing was that it was like mandatory to start using the ID card, but also there were like in the beginning there were like some killer apps or killer applications where people could really use it, and like logging into the banks or like paying your taxes and logging in and signing your submissions. So basically there were like only very few really life-changing things that people really liked and companies also liked, and that made the penetration of the digital ID so broad. And I think that's one of the key aspects that we see now across Europe as well now, is that in each country actually what will be the killer app, not the app, not the iPhone app, but like application in general, like what would actually make like a large portion of people to join and start using it. Because like I think the key thing is that the eIDAS wallet, as much as I know, initially at least, it's a voluntary thing for the citizens, right? And like if it's only 1% of the people who are tech savvy early adopters use it, then for the whatever are the companies, there is no financial or economical incentive to build thing for this 1%. So someone has to come up with a really clever thing which quickly gets it from 1 to 10 or 20, 50%. And what it will be, again, looking around, financial services, online shopping, the government services. If we speak about governments, then if, like, again, tax submission, tax filing, if it's made mandatory to use your digital wallet, something like that, I think will help. But I don't have the top 3 things that will actually change the world.
I guess some of those things are already happening. The first thing that came to my mind with your answer is the EFTI change, changing the whole logistical process and paperwork around transporting goods from paper-based to digital. That is something that is currently happening and is probably going to be made mandatory for anyone who is going to transport some goods from one side of Europe to another. So I completely agree with you. Something should be made mandatory as well. But question to Omer, where do you see the strongest practical use cases for the wallet in the near future? In the private sector, I mean, because you have so much experience with consulting private companies in this too.
So my answer is a bit more practical based on what we see right now, how different countries in Europe, all 27 of them are approaching these wallets. Some of them are really ahead, which means they have already done a soft launch of their wallets. Some are still in the stage where they are opening up tenders, and some are still thinking about it, or they're not so clear about when is it happening. So that being said, there's one common element that is very obvious, which is that what these wallets are going to have inside them, and that's what defines that what use cases or what first impact it's going to create for the citizens or for consumers of this wallet. And there are three very basic digital credentials that have been very focused on across all different actors who are currently focused on building their own EUDI wallet. Like that includes at the moment Denmark with Alt ID, France with France Identité, and Germany with the German EUDI wallet. At least those I am very well aware of, and we work with them as well. So we are much connected with them about this. Now, in all of these that I'm speaking of, and since these are the major economies who are leading this development in a way, because they are most ahead than others, then they're defining what are those first use cases. And as I mentioned, they're based on these first credentials. So there are three areas that I see as the credentials in the wallet are going to be the PID. The PID is a full form for personal identification data, which is a credential that has your personal information about your name, age, nationality, and some other information about you as an individual. And then there is age credential, which has nothing but a proof of that you are above 18 or above 21 or above 60. So creating without age, sharing your age without sharing your date of birth. So enabling that. And then the third one that has gotten more interest is the photo ID, which is a form of a digital travel credential, a DTC, which will eventually enable people to have a smoother experience when they travel cross-border. Cross-border across Europe, I would say. So these three credentials define those first cases. So the first one with the PID, the personal identification data, what we see is that it could really enable faster onboarding, smoother user onboarding experience, KYC, and user identification for basically accessing new services or existing services. As Tavi mentioned, that these are still going to be optional, which means the citizens are going to be given option that they could use their current existing eID solutions that they originally used, or they have this option to use the EUDI-based credential, which is going to be in their wallet. So they have a choice. And adoption, maybe that's a question we could tap separately. But in terms of use cases, personal identification data will enable onboarding and KYC much more aggressively and simply, I would say, for many people, and not just within the locality or in the same demographics, but also cross-border. That's where it gets more fun, where a person in Estonia can actually, when they're in Finland, they don't need to worry too much about, okay, how do they verify themselves? If they forgot their, let's say, ID at home, they could just use the PID from the digital wallet to verify themselves. It should be acceptable because it is the equivalent of your physical ID. Now, on the other side, I mentioned two more: the driving license, the age credential
verification.
and the age credential and the photo ID. For the age credential, it's simple. There are few areas where you definitely need that without revealing much information about the person who's using it, like alcohol, maybe specific test results in medication or like in the healthcare sector where you don't want to reveal much information, and then likely in iGaming when you are working with some maybe betting applications online or whatnot, you need to prove the age. Accessing explicit content that is age specific, restricted. Then with the photo ID, as I mentioned, it's more about traveling. So the first case that we saw, that France also, with the French government, they also did a small proof of concept for it in their last Unfold event was that people should be able to get this photo ID, which is a sort of an equivalent of a travel document that could be used to verify you when you are traveling in specific situations. For example, when you're going to board a plane, you need a boarding pass and you need a travel document. When you are traveling across Europe in a Schengen state, you usually don't need your travel document most of the times, but there are few times when you need it, and one of those places is when you actually need to board a plane, and a photo ID could actually be replaced when you there, where you could just show your boarding pass and also validate your photo ID via the same wallet, while the boarding pass could also be in the same wallet for you, and then creating a much more smoother experience for travel for users. Of course, a better extension of that is that, okay, maybe you could also use it for cross-border travel outside of EU, maybe as well in future, perhaps. But at the moment, these three cases that we see are much more actively being worked on and explored. And I will add a bonus one for the fourth one, which is the payments that we've seen a lot of interesting work being done on in some consortiums also with the business wallets as well, where people are looking at how EU digital identity wallets could be used to verify payments and age in fusion, in combination together, or also maybe do payment authorization, basically.
To draw this business section of this panel to a close, just one last follow-up question to Omer. You are working with companies a lot. What do you see? What are the most common misconceptions that companies have about these opportunities that the EU wallet could give them?
Well, I think the most common misconception is about the data itself. I think people don't understand the gravity of where how much data can they actually retain or store, and what can they do with that data, because this is all under eIDAS 2.0, and we with our organization are an intermediary which helps relying parties to verify people, let's say, in this scenario. And so technically we cannot store any data according to the law in this scenario, and they are the ones who are actually liable, them being the relying party. Of course, we have our liabilities in this process, but I think clarity on the roles of ecosystem is something that the reference framework is still working on, and there has been some clarity in the last few quarters in this year, but I think there's still more work that needs to be done by the end of this year until that clarity comes out. Of course, people also don't understand the impact as well, that what kind of impact it could actually have on their business, not just now, but in the next decade. Because what we see now is that not only that, of course, with the Europe, they are investing a lot of resources in making EUDI wallets a success across whole Europe, the time and the resources that is being invest on. But it's also that we're seeing this global phenomena where all major economies on the globe right now, in one form or the another, are actually building towards a wallet-based digital identity. If you take Japan, if you take UK, if you take Canada, Brazil, there is this sort of like a movement where all of the major economies on the globe at this point are working on some sort of a digital wallet-based identity, which is and basically Europe is paving the way, because they are building this more like a skeleton of, okay, how do you build a successful identity ecosystem, and a lot of people are following in the path by following the same standards and same credential formats and the technical setup that the EU is actually proposing in their reference framework right now.
But now it's just going to be a challenge of sharing that information so everyone would be aware of the responsibilities and also the potential. And now the next questions are more going to be aimed at Davi, because, digital and data is also a lot of basis for fraud and also for financial crime and money laundering and all of those things that you have a lot of experience with. So with prevention side, of course. So I wanted to know, does the eIDAS 2.0 or the EU wallet itself create any extra opportunities to prevent financial crime and fraud from happening in the digital space?
Yes, it's a good question. Definitely, it creates more opportunities to prevent, but also it creates more opportunities to make the fraud happen, and both are true. In one level, when I'm across Europe speaking with the people in the fraud conferences and forums and AML, anti-money laundering events, then they have a great hope that eIDAS will like a digital wallet will actually help them to reduce the fraud, because as I understand, if I understand correctly, like by the end of next year, all the banks and financial institutions need to accept the authorization using your e-wallet credentials, and somehow people think that okay, that will resolve the big part of the scam fraud problem, or it's authorized push payment fraud, where the people are getting scammed by the criminals and they're sending money to the money mules, like investment scam and romance scam and so on and so on. That the e-wallets actually will help to reduce it. Now, what do we see here in Estonia is that about 1/3 of the scam fraud which is being created, it's created through the Estonian ID, like a digital ID. And that's very terrifying, especially after the 25 years of history, while people have been living in this digital society, they're still, it's like where surprisingly easy to defraud them using these e-wallets that we have. And that's the paradox, is like from pure security wise and identity wise, it gives like bulletproof evidence that yes, this person is a Taavi Tamkivi and does something. But we must not forget that this digital identity and e-wallets do not help to verify the intent or intention, like what I'm trying to do and why I'm doing things, what's the behavior and motivation behind the human behavior behind it. And the fact that Taavi is doing something doesn't mean that I'm not getting defrauded. And that's something we have seen is like criminals are using that kind of misconception heavily. And even in Estonian society, banks and police and telecoms and others, they do know this. Still, it's super hard actually to stop the fraud. And then this is actually very terrifying to realize that criminals are able to take over your online, like the whole digital identity. It's not about defrauding you financially, but they can sign contracts on your behalf or maybe travel across the borders or whatnot. Of course, they're more after the money and taking loans on your behalf. And that's actually something that like financial institutions and crime fighters across Europe need to realize that there will be like concentrated heavy attacks against e-wallet holders, because criminals have learned a lot about how to defraud using Estonia, using Latvia and other countries where this is in place. But also it's true that it helps to detect fraud as well, but it's just one extra, or not one, but like few extra data labels or data points, which like investigators, detection engines need to take into account that, okay, I'm gathering more data points about this identity, which is good, but I cannot forget that I need to do all the other things as well to beat financial crime, actually.
Mm-hmm. It's actually an interesting point that you brought out, that it's people who are mainly the weakest link, right? When we're talking about Estonia, if I'm not mistaken, last year it was 29 million euros that was scammed out of Estonian people. The biggest case was, I think, 1.6 million at one time. So it's actually, you know, people who are getting tricked and are giving their PIN codes away. What do you think in the future, if fraud is going to adapt to those new circumstances, as now we have those new identifying elements? Will it just focus back on people, or what new forms of fraud could emerge from us moving towards a safer digital society?
Just to zoom out from Estonia and zoom out from Europe, EU as well. Just before this discussion here, I was attending United Nations anti-crime agencies global roundtable, and I was listening. I was sharing our experience from this side of the world, but actually I was also like following people from Ghana and from Japan and from United States, and their dominant focus how to beat crime was actually to focus on educating the people, like preventing them to become victims, like sharing the knowledge and facts and figures from the victims. So there is like heavy focus going on that direction. So there's a big part of the society who has realized that actually we need to help people not to become victims, and that's what we do. That we do here in Europe as well, which does not mean that it can be done in the sufficient level. Like it's well said that the people are the weakest link, but it's not a buzzword, it's a true thing, right? As our technological standards are getting better and better, and all these encryption techniques and using more and more like AI detection systems and so on and so on. But still, if someone is becoming a victim, then before they make a financial operation, or before they give access to their digital wallet, they have been like nurtured, like warmed up over the weeks or sometimes even a month through the like Facebook, WhatsApps, phone calls, and so on, so on. So that's actually something which all these different technology providers and communication technology providers, they are trying to, of course, resolve also from their end, educate people, build up more detection. But that's definitely not enough. And although I am quite optimist in general, actually this complex area of the problems, which needs heavy collaboration between the different institutions inside of the same industry, between the industries, between private and public, between the countries across Europe, across the globe. So this kind of coordination task is super complex, where you know that, okay, victims are still individual persons, and criminals have mapped out this attack vectors in super high quality level. So long story is that I'm not hoping to get any technical silver bullet solutions, either be it like online e-wallets or something else, but it's like just list of components, plus also like understanding the human psychology and helping them through the trainings and education as well.
Mm-hmm. I guess this answer is a great segue to the next and the biggest section of this whole panel, which is adoption challenges, trust, and all of those issues that are very human from their source. Actually, this is a question for both of you. What do you think are the biggest challenges when we're trying to introduce this new EU wallet solution to people? Is it just, you know, education and people not knowing how to use it safely, maybe user trust, technical interoperability concerns, privacy concerns, or something else entirely?
Maybe I can go first. I think in my experience of working in identity from or at least the last decade, the biggest challenge has been the people, not the technology itself. And the way I see it, it's more of adoption is very heavily relied on the cultural element as well, because, for example, in Nordics, people already have a very good pre-established eID system, which is working really well. It's centralized, but it works well. But then there are countries in EU which in which the eIDs have not been so successful in the past. Let's not name any, but there are a few, all right? And then there's a reason behind those eIDs not being so, or those ID projects not being so successful, because the people as a group in those countries, they tend to not like the idea of either a centralized autonomy controlling identity. They still want to prefer to physical documents because they can control them themselves. It's harder to track, let's say. So I think that's so if I have to summarize it, I would say educating people to understanding what this tech actually could unlock for you and what it can actually, like what it is a big factor that could help the adoption. But the challenge itself is the social element of how a specific group of people in a particular demographic actually adopts an eID. I think everybody has more data on let's say on a country level, that okay, how their previous eIDs have worked, and they have learned a lot from it, and they are likely going to try not to make the same mistakes again about it. So I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges, that making people trust this new identity technology, because from when you work in cybersecurity yourself, you have that like you have that knowledge about okay, what this thing is. You realize that okay, this is literally a digital equivalent of a physical card or a physical document, where you have the ability to take a scissor, cut the document, and it's gone because you just cut it. Now it's gone forever, right? Exactly like that. When it comes to a digital credential in an EUDI wallet, it's technically designed to be like that, that you have the ability to actually get rid of it for good forever. If you want to, you could just delete it or destroy it, and then nobody else can access it after that. Of course, since we already discussed, there are attack vectors that could impact a person. I'm not denying those, but the robustness of privacy that is put behind this technology, I think it is one of those things that if something can be digitally adopted, it could be, this has a good chance to be that.
I think from my side, definitely agree with everything you said. But just to expand on this, like it's we have seen some pan-European initiatives which are being executed super fast and super well, and these are typically like government to business types of things. Like we can discuss about, as I'm coming from the payments and financial sector, we can discuss about open banking, which was like actually forced by the government, like EU standards and governments. And again, it took a couple of years, but it was like meant for the banks and technology providers to work on. And some banks moved faster, some were slower, but actually there was like lots of great companies and great end user focused services being built actually. Another one which happened even faster was, it's a narrow thing, but it's like in the European banking system, we're using the our own SEPA 2.0 payment methods, and to make it more secure, actually, governments like EU introduced the need to verify the account holder name versus the account number. So basically, if I'm sending money to someone, then actually the responding bank or my bank needs to check if I'm sending the money to the person who actually holds this account, or is like just ensure that I'm not being defrauded or mistreated. And it took actually 1.5 years to connect all the European banks with this kind of system provider. So it was like super fast. But in this case, now we're talking about like governments convincing consumers, end users, to do something, and that's where Omar is right, that there's cultural, there's like psychological traditions and so on. I think one example or one pillar which I wanted to bring in is that in order to make it successful, the online identity, one key learning from Estonia is that like each citizen has also unique identifier number, which is regardless of my name, date of birth, which are also there, there's unique identifier number. And every system, private or public or something else, can identify me based on this number, and I can do lots of cool stuff. And this is public information. I don't need to keep it secure. It's like public key type of thing. But now it's actually not common in every European country to have this kind of unique identifier. And even if through this eIDAS 2.0 discussions, it was discussed and proposed that each government should issue the unique identifier numbers, then many countries said that no, that's not our way of doing things, and we're strongly against it. So the current technical protocol behind wallets is still about name, date of birth, all this stuff where you can have lots of mistakes, typos, fuzzy matching, and so on and so on. So, and it's way harder to even inside of one country, it's way harder to have different service providers to use this unique information about the person, because like the matching algorithms are way more complex and they have way more mistakes coming in. So again, which means that it's much more expensive for the companies in this country to adapt their services to the online ID than in the other country where people are and the government and countries used to use the unique identifier. So again, that's destroying the whole idea of the pan-European unified experience, because I know that in some countries I can get this experience, in some other countries very different experience. So and these are the things which will come up. Is one is that how to do the government to consumer type of sales or expansion, and another is how to overcome this kind of infrastructural very principal differences which actually are limiting tech providers, businesses to launch the similar services across the European markets.
And of course, for private sector, they just need the assurance that this is something that is going to happen and is going to last, right? So if there is already some discussions whether we should have one common idea or not, and countries cannot agree on those things, then it's going to hinder the whole process. I wanted to actually expand on one point that came out, which is educating the people to build the trust. And I think this question might provoke you, and I want to encourage you to also comment on each other's answers. But I know that in Estonia, one principle of the digital state has been that the average citizen is not expected to learn about how the digital services function technically, because this difference in willingness to learn might develop into an accessibility gap in the future. You're always going to have some people that don't care about those technical systems, data regulation, all these legal frameworks of privacy around those things. So I don't know. I would like to hear your thoughts that with this EU wallet, how much should the average user actually understand about what they're sharing and keep some things private independently? And how much of this stuff should be handled just by design and standards and regulations that the citizens don't have to think about at all?
I think maybe it's good to think in different categories, like technology versus the legal basis and human rights. And then different thinking in EU especially, we are the most we're the only region in the world which cares most about privacy and people rights, and we own our own data, and citizens rights are more important than the business or companies' rights, which is not, and higher than the government's rights as well. So which is not common across the world. So we're pretty unique in that regard. So I think it's important for all the Europeans, regardless of the digital wallets or without them, understand the core principles of the human rights in the European landscape that we have actually to own and protect, and also to have a confidence that our governments and companies are also following the same rules of the game. Again, we can talk about cookies online, like on browser cookies, and it's like a joke. But actually, I really love, but also miss the fact that asking the question why these are there, and like if I'm understanding why these cookies are there, then actually I get that okay, technical implementation maybe is not the best to approve everything, but actually idea is really novel, and I really appreciate this idea that people should not just steal my data and use it on their behalf. and like on that level, I think it's really important that citizens of Europe do realize what are their human rights agreed common standards, which are being dominant across our continent. What's less important for everyone, each of us to learn, is like what are the technical standards, what are being followed, and going through the cryptography and like app protocols and stuff like that. For the fans, it should be open source, open protocol, and open information. And again, that's something which helps to for the fans and like activists to dig into the code and find the possible errors and mistakes and or verify that everything is clean. So again, it must be like the protocol wise, it has to be open for everyone. Otherwise, like again in Estonia, we do see that this like this last part is being sometimes abused by the politicians, where some parties are saying that like e-elections are not secure because someone can violate and modify your vote that you have given. Some people think it's like nonsense, but some people it like works, and they start to believe these stories, and that shows that it hasn't been open enough for the technical protocol. Maybe hasn't been open enough for like people who are advocates, haven't been able to explain it properly, that okay, these are the principal rights coming from our principal laws, which are not, there is no question about not following those. But yeah, that's like definitely in EU level as well. If the eIDAS e-wallets become more popular, there will be definitely forces who want to bring him down through these arguments that you don't know what's going on there, and like for that reason, this has to be a public protocol at least.
Omer?
Yes. I first of all, Tavi, I really like your point about the cookies that you mentioned. I think it is a very good example of people knowing about and knowing their rights, and that's exactly the way I actually have 2 points, and one of the things that I think about is is exactly that element, that knowing your rights. So when Johanna, when you asked like how much people need to actually know, I agree with Tavi. Nobody on a day-to-day level, they don't need to know about the tech stuff at all, like what protocols it's being used, what cryptographic algorithms or whatnot. Of course, that would be ridiculous for anybody to, if they're interested, of course, they should figure it out. But because everything is already open source and it's fully designed in a way that anybody could look at the code, anybody could look at the regulation, what is allowed, what is allowed, what's not allowed to any of the parties who get in touch with you in a contact point in a transaction. So I think what matters the most is to knowing your rights, just like any other technology or element that is being provided by a government to its citizens. I think it's important for any person in living anywhere, regardless if they are a citizen or if they are like a resident, then they need to know what are their digital rights, right? What happens when your how much control somebody has or how much control you have, because this happened to me as well. Sharing something personal, I was traveling, I was in Southeast Asia, and since I was traveling a lot because I was in like a couple of countries, Europe and Asia, something triggered and my bank account accesses got like revoked. I needed the key codes to activate it again, and I didn't have the key codes because they were in Finland and I was in other country for some reason, and I got locked out, and I couldn't access literally anything after that. I couldn't access social security services, child care or daycare services, anything like that. And that made me actually really think about like, okay, how much I'm dependent on this one centralized element that controls the identity itself, which is in Finland that's particularly the banks actually, which is very handy and very good in some cases, but at the same time it could become that one of those bottlenecks as well when it comes to the sovereignty of the identity. Another element I want to highlight is slightly different from the question you asked, which is that, okay, how much you need to learn, for which I think knowing your rights is good enough for anybody. Just know how much power you have and how much power somebody has over you digitally in any interaction. Another element that I want to highlight is this phenomena of big tech, where we see Apple, Google, and Samsung having their digital wallets in the finance. Maybe Tavi, you could comment on that as well, where when they brought their wallets in, and now suddenly we have a mass adoption of Apple wallets and Google wallets with people having their debit cards and bank cards in it. And we are seeing this now as well in the digital identity sector as well, that Apple and Google are also entering that space where they are enabling digital government IDs to be that they could be submitted inside an Apple or a Google wallet, and they could be used. Now, these come with their own terms and services and policies, privacy policies. There's very interesting research by an Italian research group. Maybe I could share it with you guys later, where they show how much people are interested in using a government provided wallet, and a big tech wallet. And I think 55% people answered in that survey that they're interested in a big tech wallet if that's provided. So, but then of course, like I said, terms and services, you don't know if the Google wallet is going to record your interactions when you pay for alcohol, that, okay, you verified your age at XYZ store, so they could sell you ads. I mean, those kind of TOS, of course, those need to be protected as well. And according to the eIDAS 2 regulation, the wallets are not just provided by the government. There's also the element of private sector, where private sector wallet providers could also bring in their wallets, and it's citizens' choice whose wallet they want to use. They want to use the government wallet or a private sector wallet. And big tech companies already have an ecosystem with iPhones and Androids with Google wallets and Apple wallets that could impact it. Sorry, I took your question a little bit in a different direction, but I think it's also one of those elements that's worth discussing.
No worries about it. David, did you have any thoughts or any answers to Omar's comment?
Yeah, just to expand on this, like it's not only Google and Apple, but also like large card companies like MasterCard and Visa, and they also like want to, I think, working on launching their own wallets because they see that not only Europe but wider world is moving in that direction, and they're somehow trying to democratize it from the other tech companies, which is for end users it's not a big difference. So, and the second point, I think I'm thinking is also like, as I was late for a few minutes because I was downloading the Riverside Studio app, and again, like when I was logging into this app, then it asks like, how do you verify yourself, and like you can use your Google or you can use your Mac, and I couldn't use my EU wallet to login, but I think it's like if the Riverside Studio company who is providing us this app would have a real reason to integrate also, like offer also the EU-wide login app to me, and this would become a standard, I would know that in most of systems I can use it. I think that will be like killer feature, not for this specific application, but actually if it would become standard that every provider would enable this kind of login, definitely people who do realize that they don't want to trust all their life data into the hands of Google or Apple, they might be willing to prioritize it. Again, this over the 55% of people like who prefer to use the commercial applications right now, it might actually shift around if the availability is actually different.
But for all those people that want to make this change, they need to have an existing solution that is as good as the one that the private sector is providing. And here it's a great segue to my last question, which is how can we balance the very strong data protection rules that we have in Europe that tend to slow down innovation and also keeping up with the fast pace of the private sector that is trying to provide the same solutions? How can we find the balance and also, stay in lane with the private sector? A question for both of you.
Yeah, it's I wouldn't say that the data protection regulations and requirements are the ones that are slowing down the innovation. Of course, it depends on where you're coming from. Like if you're coming from US or coming from China, then you might think, but actually building things for the European businesses and customers ourselves, I think it's still like it's more like a unique strength that companies in Europe can actually build their products around. Of course, it needs more effort and more investment and all of that. But still, the thing is, like it's not the government's task to build like scalable commercial solutions. It's still for private companies. And I'm not answering directly, but like one of the ideas I have is like opportunities in the market is like if you look into the AI and agents and all of that space and that world, like there are debates or discussions around like how to treat AI agents in the legal environment or like a commercial environment. And again, like if Omer brought a good example of the e-wallet, which can be used also to verify my age that I can buy a beer. So like, how can I ask my agent, the AI agent, to buy the beer on my behalf? So like, I would like to delegate, give the legal permission for my agent to buy the beer from online store and order it for me and pay for it. So and I would love to like add this my shopping agent into my e-wallet and then get this machine to do the work for me. But actually, this agent wouldn't have the own digital identity, but it would be like my power of attorney level delegation, delegated agent who does the work. So that's like one example where like tech innovators might want to use the officially government-backed e-wallets to launch the new services, which are attractive for some people. But actually, if most of the agents would use that wallet, then it would be like large business case for everyone, actually.
Any thoughts, Omer? I see you've changed spots.
Yeah, I was on low battery. So I think Tavi has covered it pretty well. I think, of course, in EU, we have the ability to regulate more than innovate sometimes. That has been a little bit notorious statement. But I am still a little bit optimistic on that these regulations, particularly eIDAS 2.0, they are, at the end of the day, they are going to help, if executed right, to build the trust ecosystems that we are discussing. They could eventually create a much more better future. And so rather than maybe we are seeing we'll see a slower adoption rate in the beginning because of this, but I think if it starts, if the vision gets fulfilled, it could be really big. And I'm thinking non-EU big, which means that it would have its impact outside of EU as well, because the standards and the interoperability is actually cross-border and global of this concept and this technology. I think at the end of the day, it's about not just the regulation, but it's also about the private sector, how they see it, and then how they try to build services to nourish this ecosystem, right? So it's like if there are, if it's just one of those things that people just check, check a box and don't do much about it, then there's not much that would come out of it. But if they actually, it's a collective approach. It's also the governments, it's the EU, it's the private sector, it's the citizens, all of us. If it all comes together well, including the understanding and knowing your rights element, then this could be really massively impactful, not just for you, but like globally. That's at least how I see it. Maybe I'm too optimistic about it. I'm not denying the fact that, okay, there are attack vectors and issues when it comes to compromise and vulnerabilities to let's say identity hacks or whatnot, or account thefts. But we already have them even now, and of course, in an ideal world, we'll get rid of them completely, but that's not possible. That's not how reality works, right? We're still going to have them even when we have the EUDI wallets. But I think, what else can we have? That's the question I like to ask. Like, okay, if we keep the attack vector rate to the same level that we already have, or maybe reduce it a little bit somehow, maybe by 2%, who knows? Then, okay, what else can we unlock on the others with the same tech, right? That is something I like to, I try to be optimistic about.
I think this is a great tone to start ending this discussion, because we have been talking for almost an hour. Davi, anything that you are a bit optimistic about when it comes to the EU wallet?
Just the fact that it is actually happening, even if with very limited scope initially, and it's not mandatory and all of that, and like technical ID standards are missing and so on, or like there are some standards, but they're like pretty too general. I was really surprised to see that actually it's like being pushed out, and it's like I didn't hope it to happen actually anymore 10 years ago. Again, coming from the digital society in Estonia, that was something we believed heavily 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that the whole world will follow quite soon, but it didn't. And now it seems that at least part of the world starts to follow, which is like great.
Finally.
Yes, great feeling, which gives a positive hope, definitely.
Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining this panel and sharing your interesting thoughts. For the listeners, once more, we had Omer Shafiq here, founder and CEO of Hovii, and David Amkivi, co-founder and CEO of Salv. And my name is Johanna-Kadri. I am a digital transformation advisor from e-Estonia Briefing Center. And I hope that this discussion provoked a lot of thoughts and also inspired all of the listeners, the ones who are looking at this streaming live or looking at this recording afterwards. So thank you, gentlemen, for your thoughts. Thank you for listeners for listening.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.